In 2014, in a sterile, quiet hospital hallway in Des Moines, Iowa, a man named Robert Hayes stood completely still. In his hand, he held a plain brown envelope. Inside was his termination letter. But inside his body was something far worse, a diagnosis that terrified him more than unemployment. At 52 years old, Robert had just lost the job he'd held for 26 years and learned he had type 2 diabetes. In the span of a single week, the very foundation of his identity, everything he had built, simply collapsed. Robert Hayes was a man who believed, above all else, in loyalty. It was the currency he traded in, the value he lived by. He had joined a regional printing company straight out of community college, and he never looked back. For over 2 decades, he was the guy you could count on. He worked overtime without a single complaint. He patiently trained the younger employees who came and went. He never, ever missed a deadline. His job wasn't glamorous or exciting, but it was stable. It was the bedrock upon which he built his life. With that job, he raised 2 wonderful daughters. He paid his mortgage on time every single month. He lived a quiet, unassuming American life, the kind that doesn't make headlines but builds communities. He fully expected to retire from that company. It was his home away from home. He was wrong. The day everything changed started like any other. The company had been sold to a larger, faceless corporation a few months prior. They called the process restructuring. That word, so corporate and clean, masked a brutal reality. Robert was called into a small, windowless meeting room with an HR representative and a manager who looked half his age. They spoke politely, almost apologetically. They smiled nervous, twitchy smiles. Then came the words that would echo in his head for weeks, months, even years to come. "We're moving in a different direction." Just like that, it was over. 26 years of loyalty, erased in a 10-minute meeting. He was replaced. There was no farewell party, no cake, no appreciative speech from the CEO. There was just a cardboard box for his desk items, a framed photo of his family, a coffee mug, a few well-worn manuals. Just 2 days later, the second blow landed. Robert had been feeling off for weeks. A constant draining fatigue, dizzy spells he'd blamed on stress. He finally went to the doctor. The test results came back, and they were brutally clear. Type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure. The doctor also mentioned early warning signs of heart disease. He spoke gently, explaining the diagnosis with clinical kindness. "You need to change your lifestyle, Robert," he said. Robert just nodded, his mind a fog. Inside, he felt completely numb. How do you even begin to rebuild your life when the company you gave everything to has thrown you away and your own body is starting to fail you? He started the soul-crushing process of applying for jobs, manufacturing, administration, logistics, anything that seemed remotely related to his decades of experience. The rejections came one after another. A relentless stream of digital disappointment. Some emails were polite, boilerplate, "Thank you for your interest" messages. Many more were just silence. His applications vanished into a black hole. Then came the interview that broke something inside him. The interviewer, a young man in a crisp suit, looked at his resume and said something that would haunt him. "You have great experience, but we're looking for someone more energetic." Robert knew exactly what he meant. He was too old. His experience was seen not as an asset, but as a liability. After that, he stopped telling his wife how many rejections he'd received that day. He couldn't bear to see the worry in her eyes. He felt invisible, like a ghost from a bygone era. Unemployed, feeling worthless, and deeply depressed, Robert turned to the only comfort he could find: food. Fast food burgers, greasy fries, sugary snacks he knew were bad for him. It was a vicious cycle. The worse he felt emotionally, the worse he ate. And the worse he ate, the more his health deteriorated. His blood sugar levels were out of control, his energy was non-existent. The rock bottom he'd been spiraling toward finally arrived one evening in a grocery store parking lot. He was loading bags into his car when a wave of dizziness washed over him, and the world went dark. He collapsed right there on the asphalt. An ambulance was called. As he lay on the stretcher, staring up at the darkening sky, the flashing red and blue lights reflecting in his eyes, a single terrifying thought filled his mind. Is this how my story ends? But it wasn't the end. During his recovery, Robert was assigned a physical therapist named Angela. She was different. She didn't lecture him about his diet or scold him for his choices. Instead, she listened. She asked him about his old job, about his life. She let him talk. And one day, she said something simple, yet profound, that changed everything. "Robert," she said, "you spent decades helping companies run smoothly. Why not help people do the same?" That one sentence stayed with him. It planted a seed in the barren ground of his despair. He started thinking. He began reading about workplace efficiency, logistics, and small business consulting. And as he read, he had a powerful realization. The big corporations didn't want him. They saw him as a relic. But small businesses needed him. They didn't have massive HR departments or efficiency experts. They had problems he knew how to solve. At 53 years old, Robert Hayes went back to school, in a manner of speaking. He spent months devouring information. He took online courses. He watched free webinars. He checked out stacks of books from the local library. He became a student of the modern business world. At the same time, he started rebuilding his health, one small step at a time. He didn't aim for a dramatic transformation. He aimed for consistency. He started walking every single morning, just around the block at first, then a little further each day. He slowly, deliberately changed his diet, swapping out junk food for healthier choices. His first consulting client was a local auto repair shop run by a guy he knew casually. The owner was overwhelmed, struggling with scheduling and wasting money on misplaced inventory. Robert spent a week there, just observing, listening, and taking notes. Then he offered a few simple, practical solutions to reorganize their scheduling system and track their inventory. The result? Less waste, smoother operations, and more profit. The owner was thrilled, he told a friend who owned a small bakery. Then she told another friend who ran a landscaping business. Robert never took out a big ad or launched a flashy marketing campaign. His business grew quietly, organically, through trust and word of mouth. By 2018, he had a steady stream of clients. By 2020, he officially registered his own company, Hayes Operations Consulting. He worked flexible hours, setting his own schedule. He finally had time to take care of his health, to go for long walks, to cook healthy meals. Most importantly, he felt useful again. He had a purpose. Redemption, when it came, was quiet. At 60 years old, Robert was invited to be a guest speaker at a local business association meeting. He stood at the podium, not as a forgotten laid-off employee, but as a respected expert. He shared his story and his insights with a room full of entrepreneurs. After his talk, a young man, probably the same age as the manager who had fired him, came up to him. "That was incredible," the man said. "I hope I am still this sharp and have this much knowledge when I am your age." Robert just smiled. For so long, he believed his age was his greatest weakness, a mark of obsolescence. Now he finally understood. It was his greatest advantage. Today, Robert is 63. His diabetes is managed and under control. His consulting business is thriving and profitable. He now spends some of his time mentoring other people who feel left behind by the system. People who, like him, were told they were too old, or that their time had passed. He doesn't chase promotions or seek validation from corporations. He values peace, purpose, and progress. Sometimes your greatest chapter can only begin after everything else seems to have fallen apart. So if you're out there listening and you're struggling, if you feel forgotten, if you think it's too late for you to start over, please remember Robert's story. Remember that as long as you are breathing, you have the power to rebuild. Your next chapter is waiting to be written. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content just like this. We'll see you in the next one.